No, I put the chairs further enough apart. Welcome everybody to the Board of Selectmen's special meeting. It is our regular meeting night due to us having not gotten the agenda posted early enough. We had to make it a special meeting and we moved it to 7 o'clock. So it's our normal meeting night, but we are having a special meeting, which means we can't add any agenda items tonight. We thank everyone who has joined us this evening for the meeting, both in person and online. And our first item on the agenda is roll call, which is myself, Mike Gergo, First Selectman, Bob Carlson, Selectman, Anita Kincaid, Selectwoman, Christine Dias, Admin Finance for the town. Second item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our third item on the agenda is public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. We would ask respectfully that everyone limit their comments, if they have any, to 2 minutes per person in respect for everyone's time and for the agenda that we have before us. Are there any public comments? If you are online, you simply raise your virtual hand. If you are here, you can raise your real hand. I am not seeing any public comments, so we may be able to get on with our agenda, and that is fine. There are public comments on agenda items, on agenda item number 11 as well, which is the last agenda item. Okay, number 4, 298 Norwich Wesley Road update. For anyone who is unfamiliar with this topic that may be watching this broadcast, I don't want to go and spend 2 hours bringing everybody up to speed on the many options and things we've looked at for the old middle high school building, now called the Education Center here that we sit in. But we have done an extensive amount of work looking to rent out the building, looking at different options for the building. There are costs associated with the building. And so we had agreed a couple of meetings ago to engage Quisenberry, who is quite familiar with this building as well as the school that we just built, because they were the architect on the job, to put together some renderings for a couple of different options with regards to potential demo and site redevelopment of this site here. We are aware that there are ongoing costs associated with the building. There would be ongoing costs whether we had this entire building or just a piece of it, because our Board of Education central office is located in the building. But with the 2 wings that are being kind of unused right now, there's additional costs associated with that. And we do have to keep those the maintenance up on those wings, because we don't have a clear direction on what we're going to do with the wings. So what we'd like to do is get clear direction from the town, so that way we can either stop maintaining those wings altogether, knowing that there'd be a forthcoming demo, or do something with them, so that way we can make sure we protect the asset that we have. With that, I would introduce, if the selectmen are fine, to have the Rusty give a presentation and show us what he has. And the selectmen, we can sit up here so we can see the screen a little bit better. Rusty, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate your work, and we're looking forward to seeing what you got.
Okay, thank you, and good evening. I am going to share. Okay, screen sharing is disabled.
Try it again.
You can
Russell.
try it again now.
Okay. So are you seeing my screen at this point?
Yes.
Okay. It's okay. So I'm going to go through several options in terms of how we can utilize the existing building and what would need to happen in each option. This image is just simply one of the old Wheeler Middle and High School, and this is where currently the Board of Education is. So to get everybody oriented to the building, this arrow right here represents the main entrance, the image that we're just looking at. And this space right here that I'm sort of defining with my cursor is where the Board of Ed is. This is sort of a meeting room where I believe you guys are right now. And then there's three other components to the building. The two-story wing, which is shaded in this sort of salmon color. There's this light green portion of the building, which includes the cafeteria and the old gym. And finally, just the classroom section that was to be the middle school portion of the building. And the reason I'm giving you definitions of these, it also tells you approximately how many square feet there are in each of these sections. So the options that we've developed really focus around how, what we demolish, what we keep and retain for the use by the town. So there's four options, and we'll look at each of them individually in terms of what can happen. So option one, and the way we're doing it, I'll just jump back here, is this is the overall building. So when you see these options, you'll see parts of the building missing, and that's obviously intentional. So the first option that you'll see is that the demolition of the blue section of the building, that's what we're calling option one. And the second one will be the demolition of what I call option two, is not just the demolition of the blue section, but also the two-story and so on. But let's move forward. So here's a real basic approach, which is we demolish everything up to that gymnasium. We're saying potentially Park and Rec could move into that space. So that would mean it would need to be renovated to some degree. I have put some very preliminary budgets together for each of the scenarios, and sort of define the scope of that. It doesn't go into a lot of detail in terms of what we would do in the interior. The goal is just to make sure that the building envelope is good, and when you go through this process and really focus more on the building envelope, the mechanical systems, and the site itself. So what you'll notice is that the building, the middle school section, which is really right in this area, is removed, and we repurpose that entire site into be fields. The fields that are there are not going to be large enough, like full-size fields, because the site is fairly limited for that purpose. But these are good practice fields and can be reconfigured. This is just one option in terms of how fields are configured. But the idea being it's an open space, there's some walking area, pavilion. These are all elements that can be added or removed from the scope of what happens at this particular site. But this is an approach where we're removing about 12,000 square feet, which is the middle school classroom section of the building. What you'll notice that everything else is staying. So this is the community, where I'm calling the community room, the Board of Ed central offices. And then this two-story section is undefined in terms of how it could be utilized. And then this is just a rendering of how that space could look. As you can see, it's mainly focused on the fields, all the outdoor activities. This can take any shape, as I mentioned earlier, and there's a walkway that would take you to the entrance of the, let's say, the Park and Rec facility. Since that section of the building connects all the way through to Main Street. So here's the view from Main Street, looking at the entrance that's off Main Street that incorporates the entire site. So you're seeing the pavilion area, the playgrounds and fields, and then the remainder of the building, which is coming off from the Main Street side of this particular facility. And if needed, that two-story section could be updated so that there's a separate entrance here if there's a use found for it. And so this is just another image sort of orienting you as to what happens to the two-story section. You can see the Wheeler Library to the right, and in the background, you can see the new high school and elementary school. But this is just to give you a feel that two-story section in this particular concept remains. Slight modification in terms of just putting an entrance for whatever use that would be. And this could take, this is just one rendition. It could be a different type of entrance depending on what you would decide to put into this building, what type of function would go into it. You know, I've just said town offices, but that may not be what you choose to put in this place. So the next thing this takes us to is, well, what does this option cost? So we looked at it in different ways. It's hard to put. I actually didn't realize that you were looking for this type of data, but that's fine. I was able to get information from some of our latest bids that have come in and translate them into a cost per square foot basis. I want to make sure you understand this is very preliminary. I will also try to make sure that we accounted for contingencies and not knowing exactly when a project like this would start, some level of escalation and so on. So the categories I use are hazmat and demolition. So as you saw, that the 12,310 square feet would be removed. It would have to be abated first and then removed. Then there would be some site improvements. Now I just put down a $500,000 allowance. It could be more, depending on how much you wanted to do. It could be a lot less. If you said all we want to do is just put down, seed and topsoil where the building is removed, of course the look of the space would be very different. So at this point, I put a $500,000 allowance for the site. Another allowance for the building itself. When we remove the old building, what's remaining has to be repaired. There will be some electrical, mechanical improvements that are fairly minor that would need to be made. Also, when we put a new roof on, we didn't put a roof on the entire building. So the two-story section is the old roof. That would need to be, so this anticipates that there would be some roof replacement work in those two areas, the gym space and the two-story section. Then there's typical construction planning, phasing, management, project development costs, approvals, site plans, borings, all the typical work that goes along with including development of design drawings, bidding the project and so on, this project development costs. And then I'm carrying a 10% contingency on the project itself, and also anticipating 5% escalation. I have to warn everybody that at this point, escalation, just because of the supply chain issues we have, is very hard to pinpoint. Sometimes, some areas, there's not much escalation, but in terms of just deliveries and material availability, we're seeing some numbers that are much higher than the value I'm showing here. But an average, because we're looking at roughly 6 months, I'm carrying a 5% contingency in this number. So the project cost in this scenario is about $2.5 million. So this next option is very similar to the one we've just seen. The main difference is we've actually also demolished the two-story section. That's sort of towards the south end of the site, right next to the library. And that's, in this scenario, is shown as parking. It could be landscape, just green space. The challenge with this particular option is, in this building, there's 2 boiler rooms, one over in the two-story section, and then there's one in this portion of the building right on in the basement over here. So once we take one out, then we have to feed the systems from the other boiler room. That's a little bit more complicated as we look at it. But in general, this particular option looks very similar to option one, with the exception of the two-story wing being demolished. So the images in terms of the fields, et cetera, are the same. The access is very much the same, but the budget is quite different, because what happens is, number one, we're demolishing a lot more building. We're now demolishing 36,000, almost 37,000 square feet. And the site improvements are related more to the fact that we're demolishing more of the two-story building. So that site improvement cost went up. The building improvement cost went up as well. And the MEP systems, the mechanical systems, because we're now going to be refeeding from the boiler room that's underneath over here by the old cafeteria. It used to be used as a cafeteria, but also a gym over on the middle school side. That number went up fairly significantly. Same categories as we've had before, but the budget, as you can see, is now at a $6 million number. And what that leaves you with is a much smaller building to maintain. So in one way, you're spending more money up front, but your ongoing maintenance costs are and operating costs are certainly greatly reduced. So a third option that we looked at is taking, and I'm going to go back here. So in this particular option 2, we demolished that part of the building, which is the middle school portion, but extending all the way to these sign slabs and these spaces over here. So now what you're going to see is that gym portion is also removed. In fact, at one point, that's what originally we'd anticipated. But so the building really starts at the entrance where the Board of Ed entrance is right here. And that section all the way to the back is maintained. And I've just sort of said, okay, in this scenario, we put Park and Rec in front and actually relocate Board of Ed central offices to the back of the building. That doesn't have to be the case. The Board of Ed could stay towards the front and Park and Rec could be further back. But this is more of creating a sense of space. This is right off of Main Street. It could be a really wonderful space where all residents of the town could go. You can see there's walking paths. There's a space right here, sort of an amphitheater right next to the Wheeler Library. If graduation was to happen or other events would take place. There's a pavilion. There's still athletic fields, but it has a nice feel to it. It really becomes a community asset. But and a lot of so there's a lot of new site work in this scenario. So we're demolishing a good portion of the building, and they're adding a lot more site work to this to create a nicer space overall. And here's sort of an image of what that could look like. You're basically standing where the library is and looking out towards the rest of the field. You can see that this is where the Board of Ed is right now, or which could become Park and Rec. This sort of little amphitheater space, pavilions, and just a wonderful outdoor space, which includes fields and walking area for the village area. I mean, it would fit right in with and sort of the aesthetic of the village area, and include athletic fields and playgrounds and so on. And then this is another view looking from the north side towards the library. So just different. Again, it's mostly a landscaping solution, and with demolition of the original section of the sort of entire middle school section. This particular option that is not as much demolition. So the demolition is about 26,000 square feet. But depending on what you do or choose to do for the site improvements, that number is close to $2 million. There'll still be building improvements. There'll be mechanical improvements. Now, in this case, this section of the building was already fed by the boiler room that's in the two-story section. So that will continue to operate with minor changes to it. And then you look at the project development costs, same percentages for contingencies and escalation, and we're around $6 million on a project like this. So you've got a lot more going into them. The main differences, as you will see, is a little bit more demolition, but also a lot of money going into how you develop the exterior of this particular site. And then the final option is, again, very similar to option 3. The difference is, what you'll notice is that right over here, that's where the two-story section of the building is. Now, this is the most compact, the smallest building that you would have left, which could then be used, continue to be used as a Board of Education and just a community space. And in this scenario, there are playgrounds, fields, the library, but Park and Rec would either you'd take Board of Ed and find different spaces for Board of Ed, or they would just stay there, and the Park and Rec would also stay at its current location. This option is going to be and is the most expensive option. And there's really one reason for that, and that is the fact that in this scenario, when we do that demolition, we've demolished both your boiler plants, both your main mechanical spaces. So that means rebuilding all your mechanical systems as to where for the rest of this building. So it's a very invasive approach, and I don't think it's something, unless you truly wanted to really reduce the square footage and the footprint of this building, that may not be the best option, because as you can see, we're close to $10 million on this particular option. So those are the 4 options we developed, and I open it up to any questions.
Rusty, thank you very much for your work on this, and I think the selectmen would agree that I'm very happy that we had some numbers to go along with the renderings. It gives us some food for thought. I'd open it up. I don't know if you guys want to return to our seats. So yeah, why don't we go back and then can have some discussion. So I'll just to kind of set the table as far as, as we drill down on those numbers, and I know they're very preliminary, and I know you based them off of a recent job that you had done. So that's really helpful, because you can kind of get a sense of at least what the potential mill rate impact could be. And I can share some research I did today on that as well, if we want to get into those discussions. But I think mainly let's first talk about, what do you think about those options? Do you like them? Do you have any, what do you think? Any feedback, Nita? You turn your microphone on. Your microphone.
What do I say? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Does that mean that we know that all the underground is included in that? Because you can't really know that yet, right? Is that correct?
Are you talking about
anything that's being taken away?
So
is it me? I'm not, I don't think it's, okay.
would you like me to answer that?
I'll just use
Go
this
ahead.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rusty. So Nita's question is there any underground issues that were anticipated in what you put together?
So in the site work, there would need to be some storm drainage in terms of how do we, when we reconfigure that space, we would have to connect some storm drainage. the goal right now, and that's why I was heavy on contingencies, because I don't have that level of detail. The less we demolish, the more we know we've got, we're not modifying the systems underground. For the section where the middle school was, we had looked at that during the design phase of the high school, in those projects. And so one thing we do know that portion of the building, there's the water supply, and there would be some reconfiguration that would need to be done. And that would be considered in the mechanical number that I had for the estimates. On the two-story section, not sure, mostly what will be coming out is plumbing that's supplying that area. So I don't anticipate any significant changes. So stormwater would be the majority of what we would be addressing. Although in these scenarios, we're actually increasing and decreasing the impervious cover so that there's much more grass, and therefore the moisture is dissipating into the ground. So stormwater, usually when you're adding a lot of asphalt and impervious cover, then you've got runoff from that. So this will certainly be helping in that sense.
I think my concern is that we don't know what we have that we can put in there, and then we're thinking about doing something like this again. And I'm concerned that it's the wrong way to start the new year or anything right now.
So so we're talking about demolishing space. The only thing that we don't know what's going to go in there right now, and it exists.
Yes.
So I think we're trying to come up with a solution to that problem.
Right.
We have to do something.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
But
was there an option that you thought was better than another? Did you like the idea of tearing down the middle school, or the middle school and the two-story wing? Obviously that's the most expensive, or the one piece of the middle school? I mean,
yes, if we have to do that, but it's not something that the town is looking for. I mean, I'm just sort of sitting here thinking it's going to be a tough sale.
so the town right now is on the hook for paying for space and maintaining space. So the alternative, and this is why we went here, is to do nothing and let the space continue to sit vacant, which ultimately in the short term will cost us less. You could just let it continue to get run down. But
wouldn't it have been beautiful if we got rid of all of the things that we don't need and had more grass and more everything else, and just have what is the one that was always going to stay in place up there?
All four drawings are still in place. It's just this area.
Yeah, are you just suggesting maybe more of a simple, like, we don't need the walkways or the pavilion, or?
Maybe not in the beginning, no. Yeah,
That's fine.
I mean, but when I asked you, which part of the place was supposed to stay there, no matter what?
The two-story wing and the wing in what we're in right now,
Okay.
we never had talked about demolishing.
Right,
The only thing that was discussed demolition was the middle school wing.
right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's the part that, one of those scenarios, option three.
Option 3.
Yeah,
And I know you've talked to the library people.
yep.
And what did you get from them that would make them the most happy? Or are they not willing to talk about it since they have other?
No, I mean, I
things?
think, listen, the library folks, they're just residents in town like we are,
Right.
and they just happen to be on the board for the library. And I think the library feels that they wouldn't mind seeing demo happen. The open space is certainly attractive, I think, to most people. I feel like that's what we heard from people anyway,
Yeah.
when we've had discussions about this. So they seem to favor that. They seem to favor seeing the buildings kind of go away, and with the caveat that we do something, some
Different there.
beautification with the space. I mean,
Right.
I don't think anyone on Main Street wants to see these buildings come down and there not to be trees or something
Right.
that is a buffer between Route 2 and
Absolutely.
Main Street. So there has to be some thing.
Yeah.
So I think they would favor, from my discussions, they would favor some sort of a demo would be what they'd like to see.
I think that's what I'm trying to say too.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that's what we're talking about, so that's good. Bob?
Hi, Rusty, Bob Carlson. Nice to
Hi,
see
Bob.
you again. Great job on the drawings. We own those drawings, correct? The town owns those for future use?
Yes.
So if we're going to have additional conversations down the road, we own, okay, good. Nice job. I think it is better to have drawings to start with so people can see, imagine what things might look like. So I appreciate the fact that those were done. And you have those just digitally, like you had showed them tonight? Do we have hard copies or?
We did them
Yeah.
all digitally, but we can certainly, those can be printed out.
Okay. The reason I said that is because so when you have a hard copy, you probably do it digitally too, just so you can reconfigure some of that green space and parking
Yep.
space. And so, okay. So most of my questions are for Mike, but I just want to say thank you for getting those done. Seeing the pricing and the scope of the job, Mike, what is in your best case scenario, what's your time frame for moving forward on this?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways we can do this. I don't want to force anything down anyone's throat. I've got literally 2 weeks left or 3 weeks left until you're at the helm. However, we've been talking about this for years, so this isn't a new subject. The reason we tried to do this expeditiously was the idea that maybe before winter, we could have some resolution on a direction. I could see this happening where we just continue to have some more dialogue and we don't rush anything forward, which is fine. I also could see us thinking this over, getting some feedback. And next week, we could potentially say, okay, we think this is the best option. We've been talking about this for years. We think, say, option 3 is the best one, and we call for a town meeting and we send it to the town. And we send it to ultimately to referendum. I could see us calling a town meeting at our next meeting and going to referendum 3 weeks later.
Our next meeting 2 weeks from time.
We could. I'm not opposed to it. I mean, this isn't, it's not like we're just bringing this up for the first time. We've been talking about this. There's going to be additional costs that are incurred if we don't do something. Granted, they will be less because certainly this is a big amount of money. But if we go back to, say, the option where we demo the middle school, which seems to be kind of mostly what we had talked about. So there's no surprise there. That's what everybody was expecting. It doesn't give us a use of the 2-story. But that could be worked out. You know, personally, I see the 2-story having value. I see the whole building having value, but we haven't been able to get tenants in it. So we try to move forward. But say we go with the option 3, which was about $6 million. So that's demoing the middle school and then doing that really nice, you know, landscaping out there, which, by the way, I have to say, we have to give credit to Water Street, who really were the ones who put a lot of that landscaping work together, and they did it for free when we tried to submit for that grant. I gave it to Rusty to incorporate, so I want to make sure that DJ and his crew get credit for a lot of that work. You know, that was very kind of them to have those ideas come forward. But anyhow, so say we did that, we go forward to the people. We know if it's $6 million, basically we probably can borrow at the last interest rate we got from USDA was 2.125, I think. And if we get a rate of 20 years on a project like that, it's probably somewhere around 2/3 of a mil.
So you said at the next meeting, our next meeting in 2 weeks, you could call for a town meeting, which would be then what, a week after that?
A couple weeks.
2 weeks, so we're talking 4 weeks.
I'm saying we could do that. I'm not saying we have to.
So here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm thinking. 1 week from tonight is an election.
Mhm.
3 weeks from tonight, the new boards are seated, not just the new board of selectmen, including a new first selectman and 2 new selectmen. We don't know who those are going to be yet. 2 out of the 3 that are running. The Board of Finance is going to have about 3 or 4 new members with a new chair. Something of this size has to go through the Board of Finance, a town meeting, a referendum. To me, I would let the new seated elected officials, the new Board of Finance members, the new Board of Selectmen, to deal with this situation. And we've got, now we got a leg up, we got some drawings. But I don't think this board at the 11th hour should be diving into trying to push this through with any kind of speed when you've got all these new elected officials coming in. I think it's a disservice.
I don't think there's any effort to do that.
Then I think we should put the brakes on now and not even discuss this anymore until the new boards come
Okay,
in.
so the architect is here tonight. So I mean, if we have questions, we should take advantage and ask those questions tonight. I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
No, we can do that, but there's 12 people here maybe. So I mean, we can, yes. You're going to open up for questions, the architect?
I thought we could. I mean, I think it's if that's okay with.
Sure, let's open up for questions.
Boy, but I'm not saying that we have to force anything through. I don't want to be misconstrued or painted in a picture that that's what the point is here. We have an issue that we should try to figure out. I would advocate that we could get to a town meeting, and this has been talked about for so long. This isn't a new, because what's going to happen is if we drag this out it's going to take a while for a new board to kind of get their feet beneath it. And all of a sudden, this is going to turn into a long drawn out process, probably because of the new peoples. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. I don't favor that approach.
I think something like this would be on the top of the agenda list for the new people coming in. So I don't think it's going to take that long. I just think that I know in my opinion, I like to see the T's crossed and the I's dotted. I know from an email I saw earlier tonight that we have not spoke to the fire company on a rendition. Apparently there was a rendition. I have not seen it on the old firehouse.
Well, first of all, just because somebody sends an email or somebody posts something online, it doesn't mean it's true. So there is no rendering on the firehouse.
Have you spoke to the rec department?
We haven't had a lot of conversations about it. These things have been.
And the library has not seen this, and the library has only had 1 meeting since you spoke to them, and they had mixed reviews on how they wanted to move forward. As a matter of fact, they did not want to
Okay,
move forward.
so listen, I'm not going to try to force something through tonight. If you're going to be sitting in the first selectman seat, you don't want to move it forward. I'm not going to force an agenda down. But what I do want to do is take advantage of the fact that the architect's here. There's people out here that I'm sure have an opinion because they always have an opinion about things, and I'd love to hear their feedback.
I would too. And Russell, you're not retiring anytime soon, are you? You're gonna be around for a little while?
I'll be around for a few years.
All right, I'll wait to hear the comments.
So if it's okay, I'd like to see on this agenda item, since we do have the
Yeah.
benefit of having the architect here, there's a few people in attendance, and I'd love to hear feedback specifically on if there's a preference on any of these things. Go ahead, Nita, you first.
Can I ask one last thing?
Oh, yes.
Where we are right now, which I think is a very good place, very useful for a lot of things, not just for us, but for people in the town. How much could we keep just something like this only? I'm not kidding, or is it impossible the way it's built?
I mean, the last option that Rusty reviewed was us shrinking the envelope to not just this room, but at least the middle part of the building, which is where central office is occupying. I mean, you could potentially try to remove more of the building, but I mean, it's a huge cost to remove more of the building. I mean,
Okay.
so those are the things that, I think that can be discussed. So go ahead. So I'll open up. Let me first see if there's anybody online. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Jennifer Dayton, go ahead.
Good evening, and I am so thrilled to see these renderings. It makes it so much easier to understand what we're talking about. Thank you so much to the architect. I have one request for information and one question. the request for information is for the next meeting. Could we have the maintenance costs on what it would take to keep the buildings in the renderings going and the maintenance costs for the new fields? Because then I think we get a total financial picture. That's for the next meeting. I don't expect numbers tonight. My question is, have we done an audit of town playing fields? And is there a need for additional town practice space? Thank you.
That's Jennifer D. And thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, we continually have the feedback that we do not have enough field space. So that's why this was an attractive option to incorporate more field space. This would be a welcome addition to the town based on the feedback that we continuously get of a lack of field space. As far as your question about the maintenance costs, we have maintenance costs, certainly have maintenance costs on the building. As far as what it would take to maintain the fields, I don't think we necessarily have that. I'm not sure if we'd be able to get that in time for the next meeting. Based on where this conversation is going, however, I don't know that we will take this up at the next meeting anyway, at least the next meeting of this board. It sounds like the incoming first selectman would prefer to wait till the new board is seated. So I'm gonna defer to that unless Nita has a strong opinion on it.
No.
Or unless the public has a strong opinion on it, which of course we're talking to the public. So I'll take a comment from here. Gary, I think you were going to speak. I don't know if that mic's on. You just have to turn it on. Just hold the button down. There you go. Should be fine. Just takes a sec. Yeah, hold it down. There you go. Just talking to it.
Test.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Rusty, really nice work. A comment, a couple comments and a couple questions. The options that include the amphitheater, that's all on library property. There's an A2 survey for the library on file in the town hall. The library's property line goes almost all the way to the edge of that building and across part of the cul-de-sac, you know, the U. I think we missed an option. And let me get through this in the next one and then it'll tie all together. But where's the full demo option? Because having demoed a few large facilities in my past, it's always cheaper to sever all the energy sources, turn over an empty building, put a fence around it and take it down. Always cheaper than surgical demo in a partially occupied facility. But, you know, and that ties into the next question is where's the need? I mean, we seem to be finding a solution for a building that's standing versus improving. Park and Rec is at the old firehouse. If we move them here, that's going to strand a different asset. The Board of Education, I was on the repurposing committee. The chair, Christine, I believe her name is, said we can always put the Board of Education in a commercial solution. They used to be in Mike's old office prior to this. So I'm struggling with finding a use for a legacy building versus do what the town actually needs and affords. And the last thing is just a cautionary note. Before you embark on anything, before perhaps we did renderings, Rusty, we should have had an environmental assessment done on the facility. So we know exactly what we have here. So get someone in here to do a phase 1 analysis to see if there's been any reported spills or what have you. And then potentially based on that, some further digging, no pun intended, to make sure we understand exactly what we would be getting into. Because, you know, the history with the PCBs across the road is not lost on many of us.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, we didn't ask Rusty to look at the whole tear down, so that wasn't his task. And just to clarify, the firehouse is not our asset. It belongs to the fire company. So abandoning that asset is an option. And certainly we could put our Parks and Rec in a different building and then look at different options in working with the fire company for that building. Other questions? Yep, Brett, you're recognized.
Brett Mastriani. Hi, Rusty. Good to
Brett.
see you. I'm pretty familiar with this building after being on the building committee for 6 years prior. Some of my concerns are, I don't think we have an ample picture of the total cost of the knockdown if we're using rec in this facility. I would believe that rec would still need to use the tunnel to get to the other fields. We know the tunnel is a major issue that needs some major renovations to keep it safe for our kids. The other concerns are, if we move rec here, how do the PCBs that are in the building, are they in that one-story wing that we're still keeping for them, and what kind of mitigation would happen with that? So I am concerned about the costs a little bit. As Gary mentioned, we should have learned our lesson on the old school building project that we just had and the overruns on that. And I do know in that proposal that we just approved last night for the funds for the 7,500, there was renovations for the old firehouse. So are those coming? And then if I look at the options, I do like sticking to the original plan of knocking down the one-story wing and trying to figure out the most cost-effective way to do that. And then secondly, on that, I do think it'd be nice to get a full cost for a complete knockdown, and then turning this potentially back over to the library or for open space. But it should be an option that we look at for the most cost-effective way to our residents. But I do think that the pictures are nice to see a visual with it. But like I said last night, I wish we did talk to the parties involved to get a little buy-in on which way we're moving, even with pictures, before we spend some money. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, there's a lot of parties involved. There's a whole town involved, and it'll go through town meeting, but the Board of Selectmen has the responsibility of coming up with ideas and trying to move things forward. So that's what we're doing. And this will go through an entire process with plenty of parties who have thoughts. And based on tonight, unless I'm hearing some cry for moving this forward expeditiously from anyone, it sounds like we won't be. So there'll be plenty more time to discuss this. Any other comments out there? Yes, go ahead, Carl.
Carl Johnston. Rusty, nice to meet you. Very good job on the drawings. I have a couple suggestions. The first project, there doesn't seem to be enough parking for all of that downtown area for the people to come and use the park, which you'd be losing a lot of parking that you take out the back. The repair of the bridge for the guys to travel back and forth from the fields to over here would have to be worked, which goes under Route 2. The phase 3, I believe when you were taking the second building on the back half down, is there any reason why you couldn't leave portion of the boiler room there so you don't have to touch any of the mechanicals? That would be one question for you to look at. And then the other thing is, for the added parking you would do by taking that position down, you're spending 3.4 million extra just to gain that parking. That would be the only thing. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Christina. I don't know, Rusty, if you had anything you wanted to add first.
And I certainly don't mind responding to some of the questions. Just to start out, I mean, these are big picture concepts. In a process like this, you have some concepts, but there's a lot of interaction that would need to occur. The selectmen and the town would have to decide what programs go into these buildings if they were to be used. We would develop programs. We would work out exact details on how much parking. This is a big picture type budget, and it's also a big picture type concept. I mean, I understand the comment about the amphitheaters on the library site, and certainly I understand that. I mean, we were just looking at it again in a holistic way for that entire site. But those are the types of details. I mean, it might be something that the library might be interested in. This is just to get the conversation going. This conversation would go to the next level where things like parking and things like, can we leave part of that building? It would be awkward because it's a 2-story building and we're demolishing all around the lower level of the building. But those are valid questions. And, we would explore in a process like this, the next step would be to explore all those comments and get into more detail. So if you were to move things forward, I would suggest that you might move it in the sense like going to the next level of discussion and detail of what, of an approach that might be more viable or people, the group as a whole would think would be the direction to go in.
Christine, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, the concept of moving recreation to a different space doesn't necessarily mean that people would have to cross Route 2. Recreation used to exist out of the condo down at Holly Green. We have the rec shack and other storage areas at the rec area. So anything that's happening for those programs would be run out of those storage spaces. And then if there was new programming happening on this side of the street, then that could be handled in a space that was over here. Many towns have multiple facilities throughout their town. So it would just be nice for us to have multiple locations to hold rec, where right now we don't even have a full-size regulation soccer field for the rec program. And we have lots of asks from other groups to use the space. So it is definitely at a premium. So I think we just need to be creative and not think about how the school was using the space and having to park on one side and use the tunnel to get to the other side, and kind of look at them as independent areas where we can hold our programs.
Thank you, Christine. Is there any other comments from the online? Okay. I would just, as we look to end this conversation, I think, and I don't think it'll appear on another agenda based on what I've heard tonight, while I'm still here anyway. I just want to mention, I would advocate for, if we're going to keep the building, and we're going to move, we move rec over here or whatever, which I think there's a need. I think there's premium space there where we could offer more courses, more classes, more offerings that we can't currently do with the space we have. The idea of the firehouse, I think the only rendering we were talking about was looking at it as a commercial space, possibly because there aren't deed restrictions there. We would have to work with the fire company with anything, but I think it was just reimagining that because we don't have deed restrictions necessarily on that property. But the other thing I would just mention is with that 2-story wing, there are not education facilities banging down the door for this building. I truly think the best thing would be to move town hall operations into one building. And I've been saying it for a while. Having town hall in 2 buildings is not ideal. It doesn't lend itself to the most efficient manner of working. And if we were to create a heart of the village type thing like this, which is what this is, I don't think it's too big a deal to move town hall just down the street a bit. We'd still be in the village. We could create a more state-of-the-art climate controlled environment for town hall. And it would potentially open up some opportunity where it seems like we could use more parking for the business that has become so popular down in downtown. So I'd just like to leave this meeting with those thoughts on the table. I thank you, Rusty, for your work. I'm sure incoming first selectman Bob Carlson will be in touch in a month or so. And I'd like to just thank you for not just this, for all the work you've done for the town of North Stonington. We're certainly forever indebted to you. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Rusty.
Okay.
Let's move.
Good night,
Let us move on. We're going to move on then. Agenda item number 5. American Rescue Plan funds. So I got a couple things on this. First of all, it seems to have over the last few weeks, it sounds like there's been more interest in potentially moving forward a comprehensive plan for the use of the rescue plan funds versus kind of coming forward with one request at a time. So I just wanted to bring that up for discussion. What you have before you is a breakdown of total funds that have been allocated to date, as well as some proposed uses of the funds for discussion. Tonight, we could discuss potentially moving forward something like this. We do have to have another town meeting for the appropriation of the truck, which has already gone through Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen. if this was of interest to you, we could add this to a town meeting to get approved. So we have a roadmap for the rescue plan funds. So I'll just kind of run through what I have written here for the benefit of everyone that's here. I'm not going to go through what we've already spent. Well, I can quickly just summarize it for those who are interested. We've made we've allocated $260,685.20. I'm not going to detail each of the expenditures, but I'll just mention we made a donation to the fire company of $165,000 for per diem. We've implemented a municipal notification system for not to exceed 15,000. We funded Ledge-Lite Health District 1% of our funds at 15,000. We funded the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center for social services for 15,000, which is 1% of our funds. We funded the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments Planner Recovery Coordinator for $10,092. We funded the Cultural Coalition, 1% of our funds for $15,000. We funded technology for our virtual hybrid meetings, not to exceed 7,500. We funded the new business hire incentive program of $15,000. We purchased some new signage for $1,092. And we funded Thames Valley Council for Community Action for $2,000 for Meals on Wheels. We actually, this was when I did this on Friday, I was not quite approved yet, but it was approved last night. We've also funded $7,500 for the renderings and the work that was just seen. The computers. Oh, yeah, no, that wasn't our, sorry. Yeah, that wasn't. So what I did was, if you remember back several months ago, we had put forward a draft proposal for the use of these funds. We didn't really vote on it. We just kind of talked about it and kind of nodded our head in agreement or disagreement, but it was just kind of more of an idea of what to use the funds for. So I have a proposed use of the funds where we can talk about it. And if you guys want, we can try to move forward something to a town meeting so it's more codified and that we can say, okay, this is what we're going to spend the money on. So what I have here is I just put in $500,000 toward this property, the 298 Norwich Wesley Road, whether that's renovation, whether that's demo. It's putting some money aside for open space, which is an appropriate use of funds for the ARPA funds. We also had listed $150,000 for creation of outdoor spaces for recreation and general public use. For the recreation fields and Hewitt Farm cabin bathrooms. We talked about that last time, so that remains in here. And then I have listed here $600,000 for water sewer. And it seems to me that from the All Boards and Commission group meeting we had, the most pressing need was for clean water and sewer infrastructure was discussed. I'll just read what I have here. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many businesses added temporary outdoor seating or modified operations to accommodate restrictions in with the public. Town of North Stonington is seeking to provide funding for necessary permanent water sewer improvements to businesses looking to expand capacity or existing buildings to create housing, including affordable housing units. So this would help on the water sewer end of things, whether it's a sewer tie-in or upgrades. I know that that's been discussed on a number of different boards. This idea for, one of the needs of potentially businesses could be upgrades. So that's really the rest of the money, with the unallocated amount being $19,574. I'm bringing this up because there seems to have been an interest in allocating the funds, so that way we're not continuing to move forward. Does the Board of Selectmen have an opinion on moving forward? Or do you have any suggestions on this?
So I have a question. We had a joint meeting with the EDC. Nicole Porter was here, Brett was here, Sam Trenzi was here. And they talked about an initiative for $100,000 to help small business that was suffering under the COVID. And I don't see that $100,000. I know they're working on it, but I don't see that $100,000 as And if you go through what you just asked for, there's only 19,000 left. I know they're looking for 100 for that initiative.
Yeah, I mean, that's covered under the water sewer. So I think based on what I heard at the meeting where we had the businesses there as well as EDC and sector and chamber, the biggest need that was expressed was employees, which we've already covered that with the works program, and the potential for help with water sewer type initiatives where they've added seating, but they don't have enough capacity to officially add more seating. So that's encompassed under that. So the other types of things that a business would need, I'm not sure that would be necessarily covered under this program, but that is clearly covered. So it is incorporated in here. And I could see whether it's the Council of Governments or Ledgelite help us with implementing something like that. And I've talked to Ledgelite about it. They would be able to potentially help us, but it is covered under this here.
So when we had that all boards and commissions meeting, there was a lot of ideas that came through. So you've kind of honed in on these three. The 500,000 is kind of just a generic number to throw at the 298 demolition reconstruction bit project. The 600,000 is kind of a generic number towards the water and sewer initiative. The 150,000, we didn't get into great depth on that discussion. We don't. Do you have actual cost on what it costs to redo the Ewart Farm cabin and make it into restroom facility, or do we have? Was that just a kind of a round figure?
It's just a round figure. I mean, what we could do. So again, we don't have to do what I'm suggesting here. I'm responding to the feedback that I feel like we've heard at some meetings. If you want to move forward something like this, we can. Again, you can wait until you're here to take this up, but I think you could get more specific numbers and then go, to a town meeting. If these were, I think what I wanted to do tonight was kind of talk about this. And if you like the idea of putting something more permanent together and going to town meeting, we can fine tune this and then.
Well, Stonington just came out with a comprehensive plan, and I think they had a community conversation. They brought people together, which.
Who was that?
Stonington.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
So we have not done that. We've had an online meeting of boards and commissions, but not a really community conversation. And I would recommend something like that to hone in on how this money is going to be used, and then come up with one comprehensive plan and use it for that. We've been doing it piecemeal at this point, and I think we've hit a lot of good spots, like people that need the money, like Pocatuck Neighborhood Center and things like that. So I'm not opposed to where we're giving money so far. I think we have to wait for EDC to come in with their proposal they're working on, but also possibly do a community conversation on the balance of the monies. So the entire town is in the discussion, then take that to a town meeting.
Do you have any feedback, Nita?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. So I would suggest that we just kind of table this until a community conversation takes place, and we could.
Unless you want to schedule one, it's up to you.
Well, it takes some organization to put a community conversation together. I mean, we can just schedule a meeting, but a community conversation and just a public hearing are two different things.
Understood.
Is there?
If you want to wait, I can do it in 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, if you want to do a community conversation, I think that would be best to wait, because that's more, there's a lot more organization to that, but a public hearing could easily be pulled together. But I think you're right. A community conversation would be helpful, but there has to be guardrails, because it can only be used for what it can be used for. And again, we don't have an exact answer. So, people may come to the meeting. Well, I want to know if this can happen. Well, there's not an approval process for this. We have to use our best judgment. And I think, when I think about trying to make sure that we're within what the guardrails are that we have, these are some areas that seem to make sense.
We could probably get someone from the state to come and speak at a conversation, couldn't we?
Oh yeah, we could get somebody from like Courtney's office has been pretty involved.
Christine will do it. But no, I'm just saying, if we can get somebody, we do it for other things. We bring in people, experts to speak about things. So if the state would be willing to, as a matter of fact, didn't we just give a bunch of money to sector? So they could hire someone to help us decide how we would spend the money?
For the works.
Or was it
program.
SCOG?
No, Yes, SCOG did.
Yes.
They haven't hired somebody yet, but they would be a good person.
No,
to
but they'd
bring
be
in.
someone that would be good to bring in and
Yes.
advise us and at a
Yes.
meeting.
Yes, the COG would be a good person to have in, yes.
How much money do we have left here? Is it at the bottom of the page? Is that the actual? Yes.
Yes, 1.2 million
Okay,
and 1.2575.
okay.
Yeah, so why don't we just hold off then? Again, I want, if there was an urgency to want to bring this to a town meeting, I brought it up tonight because we have, I just want to make sure I'm being as helpful as possible.
Mhm.
So why don't we just hold off? The only thing I will mention is there's two other things to cover under this topic. The first one is Christine handed you a request, which I would like to recommend approval for tonight, and that is from our building department. The land use department and IT is requesting an appropriation from the rescue plan for $7,500 to pay for 3 years of funding of software and services necessary to accept, approve, and process payments for online building, inland wetland planning and zoning permits. The request is for additional services to be added to an existing community development software contract with iWork that is built into the land use department's annual budget. The land use department and the information technology departments view this request as being clearly germane to the spirit of ARPA funding, as it will improve customer service, make a more efficient permit process, while allowing applicants to achieve permit approval and administration without the need for a physical visit to town hall. So you have attached a proposal. This is not going, this is for customer use. So this isn't something the boards and commissions would, like, they're still going to have their normal process. It's not something that the boards and commissions would be dealing with. This is for an applicant, which most of our applicants would like the opportunity to be able to file online for the permits and stuff like that. This is going to allow for that. So that's what this is for. Nate and Jim have collaborated on it. We already use iWork. So this is basically creates functionality that we don't currently have with the program we already have. So that they're asking for this to be forwarded along for consideration. Of course, if we approve this, it would go to Board of Finance for consideration as well. So is there any questions on this?
No.
Is there
Good idea.
you want to make a motion, Nita, then to approve the request for
Yes,
$7,500?
I'd like to approve the request for the $7,500.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 300. The last thing I'd mention under this topic is that we have had 2 other requests for funding. I have not brought them forward because I didn't know how this discussion was going to go or how you wanted to handle things, because I am concerned that there seems to be a growing concern about the piecemeal approach. Not only that, I'm not really concerned about the piecemeal approach. I'm concerned that we keep getting requests and that we're going to keep getting requests as entities continue to realize that this funding is available. And it's not that they're not all worthy requests, but I think if we don't put a plan together, it's going to be hard for us to say no to requests when we don't have our own plan together. So I'm going to hold off on those 2 requests. We'll bring them forward at the next meeting just so you can see them. But I do think it would be in our best interest to put a plan together to allocate all the funds.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Great. We usually agree, Bob, on most things. Any other topics on this plan, rescue plan? All right. Moving on, Everbridge marketing policy. Bob, at the last meeting, you were gonna come forward with some.
Yeah, and then what I do is I went into Everbridge, I spoke to one of their reps to see if there was one already done, so we wouldn't have to start from scratch. He couldn't find one. I called Christine, what I did is I decided we're meeting with them tomorrow at
Yes.
10:00. So I decided we'd bring that up tomorrow, so we can use it at the next meeting. But there was no policy that I could find, and he was going through with me, but we went to other states, could not find a policy on the proper use of a emergency alert system.
I don't know if the meeting tomorrow is gonna be helpful for this topic, but why don't we just table it? And if it's not, then we have another 2 weeks to make our own.
Well, maybe the whoever we're meeting with tomorrow can at least point us in the right direction.
Yeah, if there's a gentleman who's been on the calls, and if anybody would know, he would know.
Okay.
So we can table this for the next meeting.
Or while we're on that,
Yes.
we talked about how we were gonna market it. We talked about the possibility at the November 2nd election of having some sort of a table or something outside where we can try to get people to sign up, similar to what we did a few years ago, Nita, when you did a survey as people came out.
Mhm.
Any way we can get people to sign up would make sense. And if we're gonna get 600, 700, 800 people at an election, might be, we can get a couple hundred of those people signed up would be nice. So I don't know whether that's something that we could have the registrars help us with, trying to man it, have someone man a table. or-
They couldn't help us. They'll be busy, but we could get either get other volunteers or even staff to potentially hang out. I don't know if we could register people there, or even if we created a flyer that they could take away with them.
So I'm thinking more of the older residents that have trouble with computers and they have trouble registering, and, you know, younger people, just give them a flyer and say, hey, this is how you do it, and off they go. But if someone might want to say, can you do it for me right now? Then we'd have that ability. If we had a table and a computer set up and could just do it for them right then.
Okay, well, why don't I see if Jim's available that day? Maybe we can free him up for the day. We can ask him tomorrow. Maybe he'd be able to.
We just need to talk to the registrars about what an appropriate location is. I know it's not,
It'd be outside after they've exited. It'd be,
Okay.
probably be outside under a tent or something.
Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't do it inside. We can't do it inside. It's got to be
Right.
outside after they exit, so.
But if Jim had a handout, he could give to the people that could do it themselves, just to remind them, but actually do it for some of the people that get nervous about doing those things.
Yeah, we'll talk to him tomorrow about it and see if we can get him to, and see if we can man a table. I think it's a great idea. Anything else on that? Okay, so Nita, you had asked the Gallup House be put on the next agenda.
Yes, and we are going to have a visit from Bob, who is the one that's the leader from.
Bob from the firm that we hired that did all the
Absolutely.
feasibility study, yep.
Yeah, he is. And he called last week. We couldn't find a date for last week.
Okay.
So then he called but he said he would come this week, which he has returned the call. And I suggested that I would meet him and ask Christine and
Nate,
huh?
Nate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna do that on Thursday. I think that Bob wants to come because this is the last of the current plan. And I think he's looking at it because he's gonna wrap it up,
okay, good,
okay, which is very good.
okay, good.
okay? And of course, we're gonna want to get you very involved in this too.
Well, if you let me know when that meeting is, I'd be glad to attend.
What?
If you let me know when there's a meeting, I'll be glad to attend it.
Okay, thank you.
You're staying on with Hewitt Farm after you're done with this, right?
Oh.
Are you?
You're staying on Hewitt Farm,
Yeah,
you're on the committee, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
So will you meet with him Thursday and then come back and brief us at the next meeting then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's probably
That
the
was,
best way to do
that
it.
was, I think what we were thinking, and
Okay,
also I really wanted Nathan to be able to see what it's all about.
good.
okay?
Yeah, so she'll
I
brief
think
us.
he's very interested.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure he is. That's great. Great. Anything else on that? Okay, Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center update. I just wanted to update the selectmen. So we cut back there hasn't been much attendance at the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center open office hours. But, you know, we gave it a good go. She's going to continue with once a month here. We're finding that people that want their services do go to Pawcatuck. So we're going to continue with the first Tuesday of the month from 9 to 12 here at Town Hall. But I just wanted to make that public announcement. I did put it in my update on Friday as well. But they have been, you know, working with residents as they have been all along anyway.
What is the way that the people in town who need that kind of help learn about it?
How do they know that it's available?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the challenges is, and that's why we thought maybe bring them to town. So that way more
I
people would
know,
know about what they offer. We do, go ahead, Christine.
Our senior center director has been referring people to the drop-in hours, but I also think that she's giving people the resource and then they're coordinating in other ways with the neighborhood center. And I think that's why they haven't been utilizing those Tuesday drop-in hours. I don't know if we want to make sure that we're coordinating with the school to make sure if parents are in need of any resources, if that's an avenue that we should be.
I think it's a good question.
I know they
Yes.
do a lot of their own stuff, but
Yeah, why don't we'll make a note to follow up with the school. The school's pretty good about trying to identify people that do need help. And they know more about
Yeah.
people in the community at schools than we do about community members, because they have the free and reduced lunch program, I think. So they have ways of knowing, families that might be in need.
Yeah, and the town clerk does interact with them as they're here on Tuesdays, so she knew the hours they were there, and if people are looking for them, she knows how to direct them. But I think it's hard to specifically identify who needs the help, because they don't want people to know they need the help.
Exactly.
They don't, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking with Susan pretty regularly, the director,
Yeah.
and putting things in the update to, we've been trying to get, but I don't know who reads that might be in need. And, we're doing our best to try to get the word out. I know the quarterly, they contribute.
Think about it that way.
It is, yeah. But trying to bring them to town was one other way to help
Right.
bring the services here if somebody couldn't get down to
Right.
Pawcatuck for some reason.
Do we want to make it a Facebook event on our Facebook page, just as a random thing? for
So
people to see?
it is a Facebook event on our
Okay.
Facebook page, but that's a good note that we have to make. We have to modify that event because I think it is saying that it's every Tuesday still.
Okay.
I just need to change that. Any other comments on that? Selectmen's expenses, there's nothing to report there. Minutes?
So typically I'm the one that motions for minutes, but I've got issues with the September 28th, so I'll let somebody else motion and we can discuss it.
Are those the ones that I submitted?
Yes.
Of course you have issues with them. It's the first ones I've ever submitted in a long time.
Doesn't look like you wrote it though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Motion to approve the minutes of September 28th. Why don't you just tell us the issues and we can fix them and then amend them?
Well, it's not, you'd have to rewrite the whole thing. Okay.
Would you like to take the minutes and rewrite them for the next time?
No, I would not. So here's the thing is, I looked at the minutes, I read the minutes, and then I went back and I watched the recording. While I was reading the minutes, because I'm thinking, okay, this is two different meetings. And I'm really concerned about the way that I was misrepresented in the meeting minutes, because if I didn't go to the meeting and I didn't listen to it, then I would have a whole different opinion about this seat and what I said at that meeting. First, with the additional appropriation for the truck. The first time it's mentioned, is where Carlson suggested the truck be replaced sooner instead of later. I spent 15 minutes talking about how although I think we needed a truck, I didn't like the way we circumvented the budget system. And I wish there was more passion and pitches given when we were talking about the budget. Second thing is on the speed humps, I spoke for a while and asked if we could put 2 or 3 speed humps in. And rather than doing all 8, that was never mentioned. There was a comment that there was a map handed out that night on speed hump locations. That's not true. There was no map handed out. I happen to have a map with me.
Bob, could we, in the interest of time, if you have amendments, can you just point them out? We can amend them, or do you want to take the minutes and amend them yourself and bring it back next time?
Why don't we just, if you want to pass the minutes, you two, I'll just vote not to pass them. You can still pass them to the no.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I don't want to cut you off. If you want to clarify more,
No,
I certainly don't
I'm
want to
good.
cut you off if that's what
No,
we're going to do.
I'm good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a motion, a second to approve the minutes as presented. Is any more? She motioned it. I seconded it. I don't know. Did you motion it?
My motion didn't need a second.
I motioned it and you seconded it.
Nita
Is that a
did,
problem?
Nita seconded it.
Oh, okay. So why don't we just put that one aside and,
Oh, you just vote on it.
No, I don't agree with passing minutes if you
Okay.
don't like the minutes. I mean, if you think
I
there's
think
something.
they're inaccurate because of
So Bob, I had to step in and fix these minutes as best as I could. So if there's a problem with the minutes, I submitted them. I would like to request, if you don't like the minutes or you have a problem with them, that you modify the minutes and
I'll modify them.
and
Thank
send
you.
them back to
that's,
me.
that's,
Okay?
that's fair, that's fair.
Yes, I mean, and I apologize if something was misrepresented. I did do my best on them. I
You didn't
certainly-
write them, so
No, I did submit them and I have to take credit for them. So, okay.
you don't have to email them. I have them, Christine.
You have them in a Word document?
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
send them to Word so you can modify them.
Send them over.
All right. So we'll table why don't we just table the minutes of was that the 28th?
28th of
All
September.
right, we'll just table. So I remove my motion. You'll remove your,
I will, yes.
okay, so
I
we'll just
remove
table
it.
those minutes.
Okay, now we have only 2 more to go. or
Yes.
3?
One more set of minutes. I will make a motion that we approve the Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from October 12, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any public comments on agenda items as we close the meeting? Any hands online? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I think